Hello and welcome to another Testtech-Solutions how-to video. In this video we're going to discuss how to import data into the CommDAQ software. So once you launch the CommDAQ software, you're first going to go to the File drop-down menu and go to Import File, and we're going to do the Import CommDAQ file type first. The CommDAQ file type isn't a .rdd extension, and that's the native file type for CommDAQ. So when you've taken data previously and that you want to open and analyze and review later, this would be the way to do that. So that previously recorded data you would save and export it as an RDD file that you can bring in later. So first thing we're going to do then is we're going to select some data. In this case it's going to be the pond level. This is some data I recorded a while back. So you can see once the RDD import opens, you've got a couple options. First, you can change the tag name. Now this can't be a tag name that already exists, but it can be anything else. We're going to set the tag name to append. So if you want it, when it imports the data, to assign it right to append and have it draw on the screen immediately, you select that. Otherwise, you can select none, and then you'll just import the data and you can add it manually to the screen later. In this case, we'll leave it to pen 1. The other option you have here is for scaling. You can go in and scale the tag as it imports however you want. If you had it as, let's say it's a 0 to 10 volt signal that you want to convert to an actual engineering unit, so 0 to 10 volts is 0 to 500 psi, you could make that conversion here so the data is in a scale that you want. Once you're ready, you're going to click the import tag, and what you'll see is it'll actually draw it on the screen and zoom right to that moment where it was imported. So in this case, this data was taken all the way back in from March till August, and this is actually about 4 to 5 months worth of data. And you can see that when we go to chart and then chart settings, here's our time span for the chart being displayed. So this divides out to about 130 some days or so. Alright, so the other thing we can look at here under the pen settings, so it automatically imported it. The connection is a local connection, which we'll talk about. And then here's our tag, changed to visible, and it automatically set the scale. If you want to use any of the pan and zoom and touch modes, you'll have to disable this auto scale and apply the settings to be able to do that later. So real quickly, under the connection settings, where that data got imported is here under the local tag. We see the pond level, and you can go in here and you can actually make a few changes if you needed to after the data is imported. So the once the data is imported, now we'll talk just a few minutes about how you'd actually analyze it. So we've got this pan function here, that's where you can move the data back and forth. Once you remove the auto scale, there was also a lock scale. Those need to be off to be able to do this. Otherwise the pan doesn't work. So, and then also you've got a zoom time, so that will zoom in between. It'll keep the y-axis the same, but the x-axis will be zoomed in. And then we'll redraw that data, and we can see that now that we've done that, now our time span is a lot smaller. Okay, then we can also do a zoom window where we can zoom in, and that draws a box like this. And now we're going to adjust both the y-axis and the x-axis. And I'll go ahead and zoom in even further. The last button here is the marks, so you can go in and set a mark and a mark, and we'll talk about that in another video. But basically this is how you could go in and zoom into where you wanted to and look at delta times, values of the tag at the marks themselves. So the other file type we want to talk about importing is a CSV type, which is a fairly common export file type. So we'll kind of follow the same procedure. I've got some data already in here ready to go. Now this one you get a significant lot more options to choose from when you import, and it also gives you a preview to help you see what the data you just try to import looks like. So I'll show you if we change it, the delimiter here, you can see that now the data all looks messed up. Maybe change it to comma. Now you can see that the data is being delimited correctly. So the first thing to do here, we're going to start, we can change the tag name just like we did before. In this case, we're going to import the system pressure, so let's change that to system pressure. Okay, and that has to be a unique name. Now the data start row, that would be here, row 3. So we're going to change that to row 3. The time column here, we can see that the time is here, it's easily recognizable, so we're going to leave the time column at 1. All right, and then for the time reference, we've got two options here. First, you've got absolute time. Now, absolute time uses the full time value in here. So if these values were in, let's say, seconds, this was 0, this was 1, this was 2, that would import it back at the starting time of 1970, which is the way the time code works. So you would want to use relative time in that case. So relative time, you'd pick the time, the starting time, any date you wanted, and then the time units, and that would import it to that time. If you use absolute time, it's going to import it at this actual time code. So the value column here, we're going to import, it's column 2 for system pressure. We're going to set it to pen 2 because we've already set the other item to pen 1. This data end row, this would only be applicable if towards the end of your data, so we can scroll down. So if at the end of your data you had a bunch of items you wanted to cut off, for example, and you could also cut chunks out of your CSV. So let's say you wanted to only look at the data from row 6,000 to row 10,000. You could do that by setting the start row and the end row. This one also has scaling for importing. If you wanted to convert from a 0 to 10 volt to 0 to 500 psi, you could do that. Now, once you're ready, you're going to click import. Okay, and you can see that it imported the data and changed the time scale to be in reference to this value we just imported. The other thing to note here is that if you have a CSV with 10 different items in it, you can go ahead, this window doesn't close on purpose, so that you could go ahead and we could import the second data column here if we wanted to. So once you're done importing the data, you can click done, and now you can see that here's our system pressure. This was actually a tank level pressure, and you can see it pumped up to a maximum, and then as the pressure decayed, it got down to a minimum, and the pump started again and pumped back up. So this is just a basic overview of how you could import data.